Well, welcome along, everybody. Today it's a two-part message, and I just want to elaborate a little bit more on the daily word. And I was speaking with Jeanette about this earlier. We read it through once, and sometimes that's it. But I like to open my daily word first thing in the morning, and just when I do my meditations, use that as a starting point. Just to remind you before we do that, next month, this is the last month, and after this, Rev Sylvia is going to sum up the power of the month, which has its own challenges and blessings. But in the meantime, I'll remind you next month, the power is order, and the place in the body is in the navel. James, son of Alphaeus, is the disciple, and the color for those who want to do something about it is olive green, just like the backdrop I've got here. So I'm going to have a look at this particular daily word again, and it's called purpose. One definition of purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, for which something exists. And our affirmation, I pursue my purpose with passion. In the Hebrew scriptures in the Old Testament, in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1, we heard a bit about it on Monday this week. To everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. So it is obvious, usually in hindsight, that at different times in our lives, our purpose, as well as our bodies and consciousness, changes. What I was passionate about once when younger changed as I moved through the differing stages of life, sometimes struggling against these changes, and at other times surrendering to the next stage of life and the changes it brings, whether I like it or not. And I know I've changed because, I look back through some of my photos, like some of you do, and I'm sort of going back through some old photographs and putting a date to them because I've just, in case I forget, but I look back and think, is that me? And I'm sure we've all had that experience where as we move into the next stage of life, we just grumble a bit. We still cling to old fashions and old ideas. And all of a sudden it becomes daggy. We think, oh, look, I can't go around like this anymore. And one definition of beauty, which I was researching during the week, was one definition of beauty is being our authentic self at any age. I rather like that because there's no point in me as a 75-year-old trying to be a 45-year-old again. It just doesn't work. And I look at myself with my glasses and I think, what an old professor type I have become. But I don't care. I'm happy. I'm very happy with how things have turned out. I have a lot of blessings that came to me later in life, but I kept up the affirmations, knowing in faith that things will be provided at the right time. And I definitely know I've gotten older because who would have thought I'd be reading Seniors magazine? You've seen it there in the past and think, oh my goodness. Anyway, over the last year, a couple of years, my friend Don across the road, he picks up a copy for me, or he did before he became ill, and I left it sitting on the shelf along with the RACV magazine, which I don't get anymore for some reason, and two magazines I'd never read. But now I read the Seniors magazine and it is so informative for me at this stage of life. The information that's there. And not only that, you look back there and you see articles like people like Normie Rowe, who's looks like me now, and a few other people, the old showbiz people, they've all got a little column. But there's also things about where you can retire, different things you can do, and how you can look after people around you. And one purpose that's become vital for me over the last 2 weeks is that I would like to know how to do CPR, I think they call it, and also how to handle an oxygen tank, because I had an example last week where I took a friend out, two of us took a friend out, and they told us there was 3 hours of oxygen. But we took another tank just in case, ones you put on your back. And the tank went out, the first tank, oxygen expired after an hour and a half. And here's this poor chap sitting on his veranda, last time he'd been in his home, and we got the other tank out and it wouldn't work. Well, I prayed, but my friend Nicholas did the practical work. And the oxygen was getting lower and lower, and it was a wake-up call onto the new one, and it worked. And we realized later there was a faulty valve in that new bottle. Whew. That woke me up. So the purpose is, and I've spoken to a couple of people, they have days where you can go into a hospital and you can learn these things. So that is the purpose I have for the next couple of months. So our purpose changes. Now, I don't want to take too long on this, but as I delve into these studies, and aren't we lucky, this ancient wisdom you thought, it's there in a nutshell for us. We don't have to dress it up in glamour and all that sort of stuff. It's there. We are here to express more and more of spirit. That is our purpose. And the Persian mystic Sufi, you may know this one, I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and became an animal. I died as an animal and became human. I must pass on. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? And the closest we can get to this in the Bible is in the Hebrew scriptures, which is the Old Testament. From the book of Mark, no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine is lost and the skins as well. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. So let's look after our wineskins while we can. And there are ways to do that. We don't have to go just yet because we are a wonderful machine. Our body temple is amazing if we look after it well. And when the time comes, we'll go fearlessly. We know about the caterpillar changing into a butterfly. And maybe the caterpillar, hopefully they don't get too big for their boots like some of us humans and work out a way to live longer. They're just delaying that moment of glory when their fullness of expression comes through as a caterpillar. So everything changes on the road less travels, only change never changes. So with that, I'm going to ask Jeanette if she would kindly pick what she wants from the daily word for us. Thank you, Jeanette.
I'm just going to read it through again. Bill, is that all right?
That's brilliant because there's wisdom there.
Over the course of my life, I have discovered what has kindled my passion, captivated my attention, and made me feel most alive. My passions lead me to discovering my purpose, to which I choose to devote my time and my life. My highest spiritual purpose is to live from my divine nature. My divine gifts of life, love, and wisdom express uniquely through my passions, fulfilling me while demonstrating the truth of my being. I listen to the still small voice of spirit within to discern the best way to fulfill my purpose. I heed its call to learn, discover, and grow. It is never too early or too late to embark upon the journey of a lifetime. I am ready, willing, and more than able.
Wow, thank you, Jeanette. That sums it up. It's worth hearing that again. Thank you. Well, we know the power of the month has been will, and we've needed that power, I think, most of us to get through the month. So I'd love, Reverend Sylvia, would you sum this up for us, this power of will in your wisdom? Thank you. If you unmute, need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Well and truly.
Good, good. It's so good to be here and so lovely to see all your lovely faces. It's wonderful. I love you all. Well, today, willpower. Charles Fillmore writes, and I quote, "The will is the executive faculty of the mind, the determinant factor in man. What man wills or decrees comes to pass in his experience." So the will is our directive power. We use it to make decisions, to choose our way of life, and to establish goals, and our will gives us the strength to achieve them, to take control in confusing situations. And in fact, the will moves to action all other faculties of the mind. The will is empowered by understanding, wisdom, love, and the imagination. All these powers work together to strengthen the will and to bring us our desired outcomes. The will is a positive and creative function of the mind, which impels us toward all that is good. However, we have the free will to choose whether our decisions will be constructive or destructive. We experience the consequences of all our actions, so it's up to us to use the will to make the right, non-harmful decisions to bring about a good life. Do not try to use the will to manipulate circumstances or to make things happen the way we want them to go, or we could bring about unpleasant results. Get yourself right out of the way and trust God to bring the best results for you. Fillmore tells us that when we choose to do the will of God, we build our spiritual character. You know, in my early days of leading study groups in the truth principles, I found that some truth students became very upset at the thought of not my will but thine, and they protested strongly. And they said, but this will is all I've got. It's my will, and I'm not giving up to God or anybody else. They all thought they were losing power by giving up their will to a higher power. And I had to explain that God is all good. God wants only the best for us. By giving up our will to God, we could not be losing anything. We would be gaining the power and the authority of the Holy Spirit to lead us into our own God-ordained good. We would then discern the truth of being. This truth would then manifest in our lives as a sense of satisfaction, achievement, health, and abundance that would bring about a sense of contentment and well-being. And a few months later, I'd get several phone calls saying, oh, it works, it works. God has given me just what I needed. Then there would follow long conversations on how life had turned around and brought the caller into better circumstances by seemingly miraculous happenings in their lives. And I could always relate to all their stories because I'd turned my own life around in the same way. You know, sometimes our personal will tries to take over and go against God's will. We endeavour to go our own way alone, but by doing this, we are living life the very difficult way. And life then can become a very hard slog at times. However, by going into the silence and spending time in prayer and meditation, we will find that Spirit breathes truth into us, right into our very soul, so that we align ourselves with the will of God and all good. And so we bring our good into every aspect of our experience of living the daily spiritual life. Self-confidence strengthens our will, and self-confidence is a virtue when grounded in the truth of spirit. It can cause people to blunder through life, not realizing how their self-centeredness is affecting the world around them. That is when the self-confidence is not realized properly. And they don't realize how unlikable they are making themselves to the world at large. And they wonder why they can't keep friends. They seem to be oblivious to their own spoken I, me, my, mine conversations, which become quite wearing to those trying to defend them. The self-centered person has not yet learned that to live successfully, we must give service to others and whenever possible, help all those around us, serve those around us. And this brings us to the saying, self-knowledge is the key to success. You know, when we look at ourselves objectively, monitor our thoughts and our speech and the inner motives for all our actions, then we're on the way to taking dominion over our lives and aligning ourselves with our inner spiritual authority. When we become self-knowing and learn to live with integrity, doing only that which is beneficial to ourselves and to others. When we get out of bed with a sense of good purpose each morning, then we're building up and strengthening our own personal willpower. If we stay in bed and decide not to keep up our appointments for the day, then we're weakening our willpower and leaving ourselves opening to a weakening of all our powers. The more we give in to self-will, the weaker all our powers become. So we must strengthen our willpower by directing it towards spiritual illumination and showing a willingness to live a life of prayer and meditation. This will lead us to good purpose in every avenue of our lives. We will transcend our small human self and become our larger spiritual self. And we will be enabled by the power of the Holy Spirit indwelling to cope with whatever comes our way. We'll find ourselves directed more and more towards spiritual pursuits, and eventually we will attract more and more people with similar aims. Then we'll learn to practice the presence of God every day in all our situations, and we'll grow in strength of spirit in all that we do and all that we accomplish. Spirit will help us to become more discerning. Spirit will send us the very people who can help us achieve our goals. Spirit will enliven all the good potential at the very core of our being. And so Spirit will give us strength to get through each day with a sense of joy and satisfaction. To further strengthen our will, we must not dwell on past failures, hurts, and disappointments. Know that in the past you did the very best you could in the circumstances that prevailed at the time. Know that you have grown and become more spiritually discerning since those times, and more successful outcomes are possible for you now and in the future. Also know that what you think were failures were not failures at all. They were just stages of your inner growth, moving you always upward and on to higher things. You know, we're in the intellect most of the day doing our chores. It's time we consciously moved out of the head and also operated from the heart. Some tell us that we must visualize ourselves lowering our voice from the mouth and speaking directly from the heart. But first we must become aware of our psychological selves. Listen to that ceaseless chatter that goes on in the head. Make a strong effort to change it from negativity to positive statements to guide you through the day. Explore your dreams, act them out in your meditations, and ask for the messages they are conveying to you. Ask divine intelligence to give you an awareness of all your personal quirks, biases, blind spots, idiosyncrasies, and uncomfortable feelings. Don't ignore them or push them down. Fearlessly explore them all, and you will be amazed at what you find out about yourself, and you'll get quite a few less laughs too. I know I had a good laugh at myself when I saw myself justifying all my actions and excusing some of my attitudes. So talk to your feelings or write a letter to them and ask how best you can change them for the better. It is a truism that our thoughts cannot rise above our level of awareness. Now we've got to think about this. Our thoughts cannot rise above our level of awareness. So the more we communicate with our inner self, the higher our level of awareness will become. We will become more self-knowing, and this will lead to personal fulfillment. As we progress from the left brain intellect, the right brain intuition will take its rightful place, and both intellect and intuition will work in harmony to serve us through every situation. We will speak from the heart. We will be in touch with our feelings and recognize them for what they are and what they are trying to tell us. By working through the heart as well as the head, we will find our relationships more truthful and more fulfilling. The heart is the seat of love, and love is our strongest power. If we consciously speak from the heart, then Fillmore tells us, then God's love expressing through the heart becomes a powerful magnet, attracting good from every direction. Well, some present-day scientists tells us that every cell in the body has its own brain, its own intelligence to impel us towards good, healthy living. Well, Charles Fillmore told us that over 100 years ago. What an amazing man he must have been. The heart reigns supreme in the body to express all that God's love can offer. So let us communicate with each other, always from the heart, and let us show our love to each other. And Charles Fillmore says, get your I am centered in God, and from that place of truth, speak true words. In this way, you will gain real spiritual mastery and raise your will consciousness from the human to the divine. How true. We are all immersed in the mind of God. We think with the mind of God. There are no limits to what we can achieve if we speak from the heart and truly express God's love and give thanks always for our own divinity. Always give thanks for your own divinity. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Sylvia. Words of wisdom. What a wonderful day it is. Thank you. We know you meant and have lived every word of that. And we look forward to being able to follow it again during the week on our website.
Thank you.